One of the unbreakable rules in scientific research is to take an object as known only so far as the inquirer is in a position to make scientifically valid statements about it. Valid, in this sense, simply means what can be verified by facts. The object of inquiry is the natural phenomenon. Now, in psychology, one of the most important phenomena is the statement. In particular, its form and content, the later aspect being perhaps more significant with regards to the nature of the psyche. The first task that ordinarily presents itself is the description and arrangement of events. Then comes the closer examination into the laws of their living behavior. To inquire into the substance of what has been observed is possible in natural science only when there is an Archimedean point outside. Archimedean point means a point so clarifying that it's your philosophical starting point. Know thyself. Liberty and truth. For the psyche, no such outside standpoint exists. Only the psyche can observe the psyche. How's that for a cool sentence? This is if I even need to say this is Carl Jung. Consequently, knowledge of the psychic substance is impossible for us, at least with the means at present available. This does not rule out the possibility that the atomic physicists of the future may supply us with the said Archimedean point. For the time being, however, our subtlest lubrications or meditations can establish no more than what is expressed in this statement. This is how the psyche behaves. The honest investigator will piously refrain from meddling with questions of substance. I do not think it superfluous or to acquaint my reader with the necessary limitations that psychology voluntarily imposes on itself, for he will then be in a position to appreciate the phenomenological standpoint of modern psychology, which is not always understood. The phenomenological, so like how psychology is almost seeing itself as its, if there was like a God's eye of psychology, whatever that would even mean. This standpoint does not exclude the existence of faith, conviction, and experience certainties of whatever description, nor does it contest their possible validity. Great as their importance is for the individual and for collective life, psychology completely lacks the means to prove their validity in the scientific sense. One may lament that in this capacity on the part of science, but that doesn't enable you to jump over your own shadow. All right, I'll read one more. I was going to stop there, but so this is that was the introduction. I don't know if people like this, but I'm just kind of playing around because I just set this up. I did it for a couple of those other readings, but I got the mic here and the light. I tried to do that pretty straight-faced, but I'm reading the phenomenology. So phenomenology is a word that messes you up, but it's just the study of phenomena, I did actually, it's funny, I messed that word up twice, and I actually did my PhD thesis on phenomenology, Taoist phenomenology, but here we're talking about Jung and his idea of the phenomenology of the spirit and fairy tales. Again, Jung just goes from interesting to more interesting. The word spirit possesses such a wide range of application that it requires considerable effort to make clear to oneself all the things it can mean. Spirit, we say, is the principle that stands in opposition to matter. By this we understand the immaterial substance or form of existence which on the highest and most universal level is called God. We imagine this immaterial substance also as the vehicle of psychic phenomena or of life itself. In contradiction to this view, there stands the antithesis of maybe it's spirit and nature, and here the concept of spirit is restricted to the supernatural or anti-natural and has lost its substantial connection with the psyche and life. A similar restriction is implied in Spinoza's view, another great philosopher, that spirit is an attribute of the one substance. Hyozomian, this is spelled Hylozooism, goes even further, taking spirit to be a quality of matter. So if you ever wanted to look up something interesting, there's this tension going on at the time of the writing. Spinoza was he wrote a book. It was called like Spirit, Knowledge, and Politics or something like that, but it was in Latin. It was like those words, though. It was like political. It was like the kind of Latin style ending, but that's what the three words were. He was trying to make one of the last huge intellectual stands almost on behalf of the church, right? And David Hume was sort of, I don't know if you could really pin them as opponents, but like David Hume is a massive critic of the church. So is Spinoza in a way too. He's a very interesting person. I keep wanting to say this, I'll just say it. One should not assume that the philosophy of David Hume is nothing more than subjective conclusion. A very widespread view conceives spirit as higher and psyche as lower principles of activity, and conversely, alchemists thought of spirits as the ligamentum animae et corporis. And I don't obviously know Latin, but you can, if you could see my page, you can see the word animate there, and you can see the word corporis, which I'm assuming means like physical, corporal. Obviously regarding its spiritual vegetative-is, which again, this is just like Latin words. Sorry, that's just Latin words that means the latter life spirit or the nerve spirit. So the Jung here has that as a hyphenated word. Think of what nerve spirit would mean. Now, remember, think of like what the connection, if you're talking about the spirit is interacting with you at a level of your central and maybe and sympathetic nervous system. The spirit, spiritual, physical. Equally common is the view that spirit and psyche are essentially the same and can be separated only arbitrarily. Yeah. Let's go a little bit further. Wilhelm Wundt. So he talks about Wundt takes spirit as the inner being, regardless of any connection with our outer being. Others restrict spirit to certain psychic capacities or functions or qualities, such as the capacity to think and reason and contradistinction. That's an awesome word. Almost read contradiction. Contradistinction means like, well, how things are distinct but the same and interconnected, and it's just an awesome word, contradistinction, to the more soulful sentiments. I'll read that sentence again. Others restrict spirit to certain psychic capacities or functions or qualities, such as the capacity to think and reason, in contradistinction to more, and he has in quotes, soulful, unquote, sentiments. Here, spirit means the sum total of all the phenomena of rational thought or the intellect, including the will, memory, imagination, creative power, and aspirations motivated by ideals. Spirit has the further connotation of sprightliness. Oh, spirit lightness. It's like, I'll just spell it so it's like spring, like SPRIGHTLINESS. You don't have to write that down, but it's almost like Jung's making up a word there, I think. As when we say that a person is like, so he's like, spirit has this further connotation of like spiritness, like when somebody's spirited, meaning that he's versatile and full of ideas with a brilliant, witty, surprising turn of mind. Again, spirit denotes a certain attitude or principle underlying it. For instance, one is educated in the spirit of something. A special insistence is the time spirit or the spirit of the age, which stands for the principle and motive force behind certain views, judgments, and actions of a collective nature. Then there is the objective spirit, by which is meant the whole stock of man's cultural possessions with regards to his intellectual and religious achievements. I might break down this whole essay. I said that twice, sorry, but as linguistic usage shows, spirit in the sense of an attitude has unmistakable leanings towards personification. That might be one of the most complicated sentences. Spirit in the sense of an attitude. If you actually take, what if spirit is real? And what if it was so real as integrated as your attitude? Because he's saying here, spirit in the sense of an attitude has this unmistakable leaning towards personification, feeling like it's like becoming person. The spirit of Pestiolo, I don't know who that is, maybe a philosopher, can be taken consecratically, I don't even know that word, as a ghost or a mago, just as the spirits of Weimer are the personal specters of Goethe and Schiller. So he's just referencing all these German philosophers. For spirit still has the spookiest meaning of the soul of one departed. The cold breath of the spirit points on the one hand to the ancient affinity view of, then he goes, it's quite literally like, that looks like Nordic runes. I can't read that. But anyways, he says the cold breath of spirit points on the one hand to the ancient affinity of, we'll say those are runes, which mean both cold, and on the other hand, the original meaning of another word like that, which simply denotes air and motion. And in the same way, animus and anima were connected with wind. The German word Geist, probably like Geist, probably has more to do with something frothing or fermenting, hence affinities of. So he's basically saying this is where you get words like ghastly and aghast. He's losing me a tiny bit with the German, but from time immemorial, he would assume I would know that, right? That's why Jung's difficult and terrifying in a way, because it's like he just assumes you know all this stuff. It's awesome. If I was reading this by myself, I would just have my phone and just be Googling all this stuff, right? That's the way to do it, so that you're learning, because every person he's naming it has an interesting story, like Goethe and Spinoza. From time immemorial, emotion has been regarded as possession, which is why we still say today there's a hot-tempered person, that he's possessed of a devil, or that an evil spirit has entered in him. Just as according to the old view, the spirit or soul of the dead are of a subtle disposition, like a vapor or a smoke, so the alchemist spiritus was a subtle, violet, active, and vivifying essence, such as alcohol was understood to be as, and all the arcane substances. On this level, spirit includes spirits of salt, spirits of ammonia, formetic spirit. The score or so of meanings and shades of meanings attributed to the word spirit make it difficult for the psychologist to delimit his subject conceptually, but on the other hand, they lighten the task of describing it, since many of the different aspects go to form a vivid and concrete picture of the phenomena in question. We're concerned with a functional complex, which originally, on the primitive level, was felt as an invisible breathing presence. Here's the epic. William James has given us a lively account of this primordial phenomena in his varieties of religious experience. That's a title size because that's the name of a book. Another well-known example is the wind in the Pentecostal miracle. The primitive mentality finds it quite natural to personify the invisible presence as a ghost or a demon. The soul or spirits of the dead are identical with the psychic activity of the living. They merely continue it. The view that the psyche is a spirit is implicit in us. When therefore something psychic happens in the individual where he feels as belonging to himself, that something is his own spirit. But if anything psychic happens which seems strange to him, then it's someone else's spirit. It may be causing a possession. The spirit in this first case corresponds to the subjective attitude, in the latter case to public opinion, to this time spirit, or the original not yet human anthropod disposition, to which we call the unconscious. I'm going to mic drop there. Cheers. I love you. That was fun. I hope that was decent. 16 minutes. That felt way longer. Okay, cool. Cheers. And I don't know. I might try this more. It was pretty fun. I'll do a little more. In keeping with its original wind nature. Right. If you're still watching 16 minutes, you probably would dig a couple more minutes. In keeping with its original wind nature, spirit is always an active, winged, self-moving being. Wow, I can't believe I almost stopped before that sentence. Let's do that one again. In keeping with its original wind nature, spirit is always an active, winged, swift-moving being, as well as that which vivifies, stimulates, like making something vivified. It's a kind of different word. Stimulates, incites, fires, or inspires. To put it in modern language, spirit is that dynamic principle, forming for that very reason the classical antithesis of matter, the antithesis, that is, of its stasis and inertia. Basically, it is the contrast between life and death. The subsequent differentiation of this contrast leads to the activity very remarkable opposition of spirit and nature. Even though spirit is regarded as essentially alive and enlivening, one cannot really feel nature as unspiritual and dead. We must therefore be dealing here with the Christian postulate of a spirit whose very life is so vastly superior to life of nature, that is, in comparison with the latter, is no better than death. So this is Jung struggling with this idea of, it's like there's so much temptation to say that this idea of spirit that seems to be showing in all these huge philosophers, and that he's saying is like coming from these ancient stories and from our ancient ancestors and in our ancient mythical texts and in our ancient religious texts. He's saying like there's so much. It'd be so convenient to just classify it as another psychological function. The special development in man's, but again, obviously he's like he's challenging, right? He's like, but what if it isn't? What if it is something totally different? What if our assumption that everybody's wrong is actually wrong? The special development in man's idea of spirit rests in the recognition of it, that its invisible presence is. I just noticed that my light kind of like haloed myself for this talk about religion. It's not really about religion. It's just ideas about self or whatever. That light's kind of interesting, but. The special development in man's idea of spirit rests on the recognition that its invisible presence is a psychic phenomena, i.e. one's own spirit, and that this consists not only of uprushes of life, but of formal products too. Among the first, the most prominent, are the images, the shadowy presentations that occupy our field of vision. Among the second, thinking and reason, which organize the world of images. In this way, transcendent spirit it superimposes itself upon the original natural life spirit and even swung over to the opposite position as though the latter were merely naturalistic. The transcendent spirit became the supranatural and transmundane cosmic principle of order, and as such was given the name of God, or at least it became an attribute of the one substance. That's how Spinoza would say it. Or as a person of the Godhead. That's how the Christians would say it. So Jung's so interesting. So I'll just do this because I have this here. And again, if you're still watching at this point, you're probably interested in this topic. But so Jung is like a big person that we're focusing on in this course. And then Nietzsche is like another sort of heavyweight on that level, but a little less specifically relevant to psych. Nietzsche had this idea that once, and he's where you hear the idea of God is dead and the philosophers kill God, and that there won't be enough, I forget what it is word for word, but that there won't be enough water to wash away the bloodshed that will come as a result. And this was obviously he said that before World War One. And Jung, and so he thought that what would happen is that people would need to create, again, so like this is kind of his idea, is that if religion is dead, then people would need to kind of create their own systems of meaning. And Jung's idea was that, and I don't mean to say this as like Jung's better than Nietzsche, because they're both absolute heavyweights. Jung's idea was that it already exists within the psyche in this. And so it wasn't about creating it, it was about discovering it. And that's an interesting sort of difference between them two. But yeah, I don't know, I'm just kind of ranting here, but I hope that was decent. I was like, I'm just doing this as like an extra little video. This isn't on the test or anything. Obviously, you're not doing tests, you're doing assignments in my class. I just know you're all working hard, and I just wanted to. I found this book, and I thought you might find his phenomenology on spirit and fairy tales. Like, honestly, if you're interested, I'll do the whole thing. It's I did about 2 pages, and it looks like it's about 50 pages. It's from a larger book called 4 Archetypes: Mother, Rebirth, Spirit, and Trickster. And this is by, again, the great Carl Jung.